Here are the top 5 altcoins making news with consideration for the just announced Federal Reserve meeting over their transition to decentralized finance, as well as a joint letter just put out by the biggest regulators in the world, the US SEC and CFTC. Watch today's whole video because let's start with Cardano and Chainlink, two of the top altcoins in the space. Cardano to integrate with Chainlink.
And they gave us an absurd number for integration. We'll haggle it, we'll figure it out. They're good negotiators. Sergey is an extremely smart man, and he's a very good businessman, and he kind of sees the future, and he knows he's sitting on a golden egg, and he knows what he's worth. And I like people like that. There's honesty in those conversations.
You see, Cardano's Charles Hoskinson says Chainlink's absurd fee snubbed ADA from the U.S. government deal.
2 more things. The Department of Commerce is going to start issuing its statistics on the blockchain because you are the crypto president, and we are going to put out GDP on the blockchain so people can use the blockchain for data distribution, and then we're going to make that available to the entire government so all of you can do it.
The deal being that the United States government is now tokenizing data and statistics on a few different blockchains, meaning the same data that people can look up manually will now be posted immutably on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Tron, Stellar Lumens, Avalanche, then Ethereum Scalars Arbitrum 1, Polygon, and Optimism. Why wasn't Cardano included? It all comes down apparently to money. In his latest YouTube AMA, Hoskinson claimed that Cardano was left out of the federal government's deal to bring macroeconomic data on-chain because Chainlink, the Oracle provider tasked with the integration, quoted what he described as an absurd number for Cardano support. To me, this just makes me realize how valuable Chainlink is becoming. I think it would be very worth it to make a deal here and get, Chainlink allows data from off of the blockchain to move on to the blockchain in a decentralized way. I mean, data like that is needed for all of DeFi. So whether or not Cardano in the future gets included in this government deal, it would behoove them to make this integration just so Cardano can start moving data from off-chain on-chain and stimulating their DeFi. I will keep you updated on this. Next altcoin on our list, we have breaking news from Ondo Finance. They have just launched tokenized US stocks on Ethereum. They are referring to this as Wall Street 2.0, and it's called Ondo Global Markets, is now live, providing one of the largest ever selections of tokenized US stocks and ETFs on-chain with the liquidity of traditional finance starting on Ethereum.
We're very excited to finally launch this platform. As you mentioned, we fundamentally believe that on the global markets will do for US equities what the stablecoin has done for the US dollar. And essentially, a lot of that is about global access to the asset, first and foremost, in a very seamless way. A lot of people globally that do not have access to the US dollar have figured out that a stablecoin is a very good way to get access to that asset. In a very similar way, our On the Global Markets platform is tokenizing these stocks, meaning that we put a token on chain that represents the economic exposure to the stock. That token is fully backed by the underlying stock or ETF. And in a similar fashion like a stablecoin, we make that available on-chain rails, on blockchain rails. We're starting on mainnet Ethereum, but we'll soon expand it to multiple networks.
So obviously the US government wants something like this because Ondo Global Markets could drive global demand for US stocks. That's more buying pressure for stocks, just like they liked stablecoins. That was more treasury demand, US treasury demand, the more popular US stablecoins get. So it is no wonder that the Federal Reserve just announced a meeting over the transition from traditional to decentralized finance and stablecoin use cases. This was just announced. They will host a Payments Innovation Conference on October 21st with a central focus on the convergence of traditional and decentralized finance. The agenda also includes discussions on stablecoins, artificial intelligence in payments, and the tokenization of financial products. It is no wonder, and I loved this tweet from Plasma, that only 6 countries added more US Treasuries in Q2 of 2025 than Tether, meaning Tether was the 7th largest buyer of US Treasuries last quarter, like a small country. And while the stablecoin supply in general sits at around 274 billion, with Tether staying dominant at 61.6% of the market share, the opportunity for stablecoins is trillions, and Plasma is one of the infrastructure plays leading the charge, redefining how money moves. Stablecoin infrastructure for a new global financial system. They've just became a partner of the channel. Essentially, Plasma is a high-performance Layer 1 blockchain purpose-built for stablecoins. And Plasma is backed by Founders Fund, huge, Framework Ventures, massive, and Bitfinex, juggernaut in the space. Always more to talk about. I will put a link down below for you to do your own research. But just understand, they do over 1,000 transactions per second. They have 0 Tether transfer fees. They are architected for global scale, link down below. And that brings us to the Donald Trump DeFi coin, World Liberty. They have just launched. Their token price is sliding.
World Liberty Financial officially launching its WFLI token on Monday. Trading is flourishing right out of the gate, with value nearly hitting $1 billion within the first hour. Donald Trump Jr. writes this on X. This isn't some meme coin. It's the governance backbone of the real ecosystem, changing how money moves, freedom and finance, and America First, home team.
So obviously, anytime a token launches, prices are volatile. This will level out. But the news today is that World Liberty burns 47 million tokens in a bid to pump price as slide continues. Of course, they also have their own stablecoin. To me, again, that just speaks to the opportunity here. And how much was burned? Well, CoinMarketCap shows around 24.66 billion tokens not burned, but around 25 billion tokens, or just over 25% of World Liberty Fi's original 100 billion supply, has so far been unlocked. So it means 25% of the total coins are on the market, with this burn representing 0.19% of the token's circulating supply. So I'm not sure how this would quote-unquote pump price, unless this is just they want the headline. Here's crypto founder Zach Witkoff, founder of World Liberty, on what makes their project different.
What underpins the token?
Yeah, so what underpins the token, when you own a WLFI token, you own a piece of our ecosystem. It gives you an active stake in the ecosystem, and it lets you vote and participate in the future of the ecosystem. At the center of this ecosystem, Maria, is the USD1 stablecoin, the fastest growing stablecoin on Earth today.
And essentially, this token is the governance token for the ecosystem, which in theory would give you some voting power or control of the outlook or the future of the stablecoin.
And I think that there's a large appetite out there for stablecoins, right? You've seen that with Circle and Tether, but those projects don't have a governance token behind them that lets you be an active participant in the ecosystem. So I think that makes our project really unique.
And that brings us to heavily respected institution Bitwise is now on record again with an update that they see Bitcoin reaching 1.3 million by 2035, their base case. Here's why.
Revealing the asset manager's long-term forecast for Bitcoin. The report reveals a target price of $1.3 million by 2035. You were integral in putting together this white paper. And so I'm wondering, how did you come up with that price target? What are some of the factors at play? I'm assuming a big factor is regulatory advancements for crypto here in the US, especially because your report notes that these recent regulatory advances are unlikely to be peeled back given Wall Street and Main Street's increasing embrace of Bitcoin.
That's exactly right, Talia. What our team did at Bitwise was we zoomed out and we surveyed the Bitcoin and crypto market. And we said there's no institutions out here putting out long-term capital market assumptions, yet every other asset class has asset managers putting these projections out. And so what we did was we dug into the historical data for Bitcoin. We looked at correlations, we looked at volatility, we looked at returns, and then we looked out into the future and we said, what do we think is going to happen over the next decade for Bitcoin? What trends do we think will persist? What tailwinds do we see? And of course, one of those very very strong tailwinds is the regulatory pivot that we're seeing in Washington, D.C. with this new administration, which is a stark contrast from the regulatory environment that Bitcoin's operated under for the past decade, and is very different than how investors have been thinking about Bitcoin over the past decade because of that regulatory environment. And there's a number of other tailwinds that we see for Bitcoin, but regulatory environment is a huge one, as well as institutional adoption. We really had this 0 to 1 moment last year with the launch of Bitcoin ETPs. That was accelerated by the regulatory pivot in DC. We've seen that accelerate into this year. It's why Bitcoin's been one of the best performing assets of the year. And we don't believe those trends are going to slow down. And that's why we have a $1.3 million forecast over the next decade for Bitcoin.
You know what? I believe it. At least I want to believe it. You tell me down below what you think. I'm going to try and respond to as many comments as I can. If not 103, hey, I'd settle for 300,000 in 5 years, 150,000 end of this year. I'm not picky. This is an ongoing story. As crypto makes news, the top headlines I will report to you. Click subscribe to stay up to date. And like always, see you tomorrow.